say, Min hametza karatika, anani bamerchavka. And obviously the pshat is that we call out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through a time period when we feel bametzar, constraint in a tzara. And if we call out properly, anani bamerchav, HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers us with abundance and tremendous amount. And just to note that on Rosh Hashanah, the shofar that we blow comes to manifest this point. The bottom part of the shofar that we put into our mouth is very narrow, and then it becomes bigger and bigger. And that's why the pasuk that we say before Tkiyah Shofar is Min hametzar karatika anani bamerchavia. In other words, that we are calling out with the blowing of the shofar from the depths, from the time period of being so bametzar, and hopefully that will break any of the boundaries, and we will be answered with a tremendous good shefa of abundance and bracha. But the Maharsha gives a different explanation. It's a Maharsha in the Gemara in Bechoros, where based on this Maharsha, they learned the pasuk as following, that there are two time periods in the year, that we have 3 weeks or 22 days to be exact. One period is called Min HaMeitzar, and one period is called Bamercha. One period is called Min HaMeitzar. It's the 3 weeks, which we are in now, known as Yemei Bein HaMeitzarim. They start with Yud Zayin B'Tammuz and end with Tisha B'Av. The second period in the year, which we have 3 weeks or 22 days, we refer to them as Yamim Noraim. The pasuk refers to them as Yemei HaMercha. They start with Rosh Hashanah and end with Simchas Torah. And the way the pasuk is learned is Min hametzar karatika. As much as I davened, as much as I connected, as much as I got out of these 3 weeks, these Yemei Bein HaMeitzar, that's as much as Anani Bamerchavka. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will answer my tefillas during the Yomim Noraim and give me a shefa and bracha and a tremendous of a good gzeira in the next year. And the obvious question is, Ma HaKesher, V'lachen ma, therefore what? It's very nice and very good to say 3 weeks and 3 weeks, 22 days and 22 days, but why in the world are they dependent one on another? Well, let's ask the question stronger. What's so important about the 3 weeks that utilizing them properly, maximizing them properly, connecting them is really the base foundation of our Yomim Noraim, the base foundation of the highest Tkufa in the year, which is Rosh Hashanah through Simchas Torah. But maybe I'm going to ask the question a little bit on a different angle. I think out of the entire year, most probably this is the Tkufa that we have the hardest time to connect to the extent I really feel that so many people want this time just to pass. They don't know what to do with Avelus. They don't know what to do, what it means. Externally, we must probably keep whatever the halachas are, but it doesn't mean to us enough. And we don't walk out of it empowered in any way, form, or kind. One of the things that bothers me very much, and you see it a lot of times before the 9 days in any of the publications, look at the ads for a second. They're going to look something like this manner. This year you don't have to worry about the 9 days, and then it's going to continue. A new milchika restaurant opened up, a new type of fish is being served, the falafel store is going on some kind of a bargain, buy one, get another one for free. We will have for you blintzes or whatever the case is. And I want to make it clear for a second. When Chazal Goizer on the 9 days, not to eat meat and not to drink wine. The purpose was not that Shavuos was only 2 days, and I had so many good milchika recipes that unfortunately did not have a time or an opportunity to utilize them. So therefore, now they gave me 9 days to only eat milchiks. That was not the point. And I don't know about you, but my kids enjoy to eat milchiks way more than fleishiks. They like blintzes and pizza and falafel way more than chicken and meatballs or whatever the case is. So again, we're missing the point. The point was not use milchika recipes and make the food taste as good as you can. Just it won't be meat and it won't be wine. The understanding is that Chazal wanted us to tap into these 3 weeks, to tap into the 9 days, to feel and be part of Churban and part of the pain of Klal Yisrael. So how do we do that? How in the world do we connect with it? How do we make the maximum out of it? And I'll say it a little bit more than that. When we talk about the different kufas of the year, and I run a series about the different Rosh Chodashim, and every Rosh Chodesh I talk about the essence of the month and the abundance of the month and the koach of the month, I always add that every month corresponds to a certain tkufa in one's life. And therefore, you could be in Tammuz really going through Cheshvan. You could be in Adar and you're really going through Elul. In other words, you need to match the time period that you are to the actual conceptual part of that tkufa. The 3 weeks are obviously a tkufa of tzara, tzaras of the klal, tzaras that come as a result of the churban. I think what we are going through now, COVID-19 or corona or whatever you call it, really in essence fits the time period of the year of the 3 weeks. And really, if we want to ask ourselves, not just how do we get the most out of the 3 weeks, but how in the world do we get the most out of the tkufa that we're going through now? What in the world is the Abish just screaming so loud in our ears? We need to learn, what are we told, or how are we supposed to approach this time period that's dealing with tzaras that Klal Yisrael are actually going through. And maybe before I start, I'll tell you over a cute incident. I was once, before I was taking a group into Yad Vashem, and I was introducing it, and I was talking about the fact that we need to remember that tzaras that Klal Yisrael went through. Now, obviously not just World War II, even though it was very clearly addressed to World War II, because we were going into Yad Vashem, but I was talking about, again, the 3 weeks, the 9 days. We remember Churban Bayis Rishon, Churban Bayis Sheni, the Inquisition, Gzeros Kach V'Tav, and my question really was, why do we need to remember? And the group raised their hand and said to me, because we cannot forget. And I said to her, very nice and very good that we cannot forget, but why can't we forget? And the girl, very optimistic, looked at me with big eyes and says, because we have to remember. And I said to her, wait a second, there's no point in remembering in order not to forget, and not to forget in order to remember. And the same thing over here. There's no point of just saying, okay, we have to remember Churban, we have to remember Tzaras. We need to understand, what are we trying to get out of it? Why are we coming to remember? And how could we make sure that we accomplish that goal? So I would like to give a few answers. There are more than that, but we're going to touch on today a few of the answers that I think can help us, the emes do min ha-meitza karatika, and hopefully should be zoche to anani b'merchavka. Answer number one, which is actually more than one of the kinas really do it, is a point of Kabbalah Sadin. Should I use the word of Chazal? Yesh din v'yesh dayan. To remember that there's such a thing called schar and onesh. And yes, there is a Rebbeinu Shalom that runs the world. And the world is not a hefker. A few of the kinos actually do it. They talk about the fact that since I did this chet, therefore this happened, or in the opposite form, so this happened because this is what I actually had done. And it's actually a time of a cheshbon and nefesh to stop and say to ourselves, the world is not hefker. Lo hakol magia li. And not everything that we thought is just a given is really a given. We need to deserve it. There's an Eibishter that's coming and screaming and saying, Klal Yisrael, you are doing something wrong. I'm going to say that everybody could do their own cheshbon and nefesh, but I was recently just thinking about it for a second, maybe more in Eretz Yisrael, but I think it's all over the world, where you need to walk around wearing a mask. And there is this point of the social distancing and being in quarantine for whatever amount of time is. Don't we hear the Abish just screaming so loud? He's blocking our mouth. He's saying you're not talking properly. He's saying, please be careful with what you're actually saying it and how are you actually saying it. Should I say that each person should ask themselves, if we're talking about words of emes, are we talking about lashon hara? Are we talking about things that we should not be talking about? I think especially with technology, where things became so available and so open and so easily spread. Someone just told me recently that if the Chafetz Chaim would have any idea about what's going to happen in our day and age with texting or the WhatsApp, or you choose whatever the vehicle is, even email, how quickly, how easily, how fast you could be motzi shenra, you could make machlokes, you could have sinas chinam, you could spread lashon hara, you could even just talk about things that are not nogea to you and what is your business, and they could spread so quickly. He would have written a new sefer on Shmir Salashon. So each one of us has to stop and say that Eibishter is saying to us, close your mouth. The Eibishter is saying, listen to what you're saying and make sure that it's emes, that it's positive, that it's proper, that it is giving HaKadosh Baruch Hu nachas ruach when you are saying it. Badad yeshev chutz lamachane is a mitzvah, and that happens because of lashon hara. even the understanding of keeping inside to ourselves and trying to stay disconnected from the influences of the outside world. That really was Layla Seder, the first time that we had a quarantine, that we weren't allowed to walk out of our house. And the statement then was, we don't want to be part of the Mitri culture. It's us and them. And again, the Abish is saying to us, stop and ask yourself, how much is your home protected? How much is your home really the way it's meant to be? But I want to take it a step further. I think one of the pieces of Rosh Hashanah that's definitely a big part in being Mamlich HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a king is Melech b'mishpat Yamid Eretz. To chap that everything and anything is in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I think we feel it very strongly by the piyut of V'nisane Tokef Kedushas Hayom, when we talk about the mishpat that's happening on Rosh Hashanah. And the Michtal Miyol brings down, before V'nisane Tokef, if a person be'emes wants to stop and internalize that anything and everything that's going to happen in the year is going to be judged now, it's a mishpat that's taking place on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur. Think of the incidents that happened in the last year and realize that anything and everything that happened last year was nigzar on Rosh Hashanah. And ask yourself the question, if I would have known that, how much better would I have done it? I think that if we go through Chorban and we look about all the different time periods of all the tsaras that Klal Yisrael went through, should we talk about our day and age? Think of our V'nisane Tokef next year. I keep on going through and saying we didn't chap what the Eibishter was geyser on this year, Rosh Hashanah Tavshin Pei. Look of how many things. Mi yichyem yamus, mi anuach, who's going to have to be in quarantine, who's not going to have to be in quarantine, who will be allowed to travel, who will not be allowed to travel, all the borders that God goes. Mi ani u'mi asher, how many people lost their jobs, lost their money, or are so uncertain of what's actually going to happen. Mi barav, mi batsama, how many people unfortunately died because there was a neglect and there was a paper in their bank that said, I didn't die out of corona, but I died out of starvation. How many people did not have a family member next to them and therefore there was no one to feed them, no one to give them to drink? How many people died because they choked and the machines, either there weren't no machines or the machines did not work properly? Mi bachenek, mi b'magefa. Who in the world ever had kavana when we said Avinu Malkeinu Mena Magefa Minachalasecha? Come on, Magefos, epidemics, those were things that happened 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Someone told me that he used to feel that Avinu Malkeinu Mena Magefa Minachalasecha, it's Tircha de Tzibura. We shouldn't say it anymore because it stopped making the Tzibur say another thing. Who needs it for? Who has such things in our day and age? Miba dever, miba magefa. How much more meaningful it is in our day if we stop for a second and think through what happened. I want to tell you, I don't know if people know, but my husband was extremely, extremely sick. Mamish Baruch Hashem, mimaves lachaim, Klal Yisrael daven for them, and his tefillas, the emes answered. And throughout the entire time, this was Mamish at the beginning part, and he was careful to the extent that we knew to be careful at that time. And people were starting to say certain things, and I kept on stopping, and I said to them, Kindalach, this was nigzar on Rosh Hashanah Tavshin Pei. Was nigzar that Abba should be sick? Was nigzar that we have to be in quarantine? Was nigzar that we should be sick? Was nigzar whatever happened? This is when it was nigzar. Avada, we're mechuyev to do our ishtadlos v'nishmartem me'ogan nafshosechem. But let's get it straight. When did it really happen? On Rosh Hashanah. What an unbelievable opportunity the Eibush is giving to us. Think through now and say to ourselves, make a cheshbon hanefesh, and let's be able to come one more step ready to chap that the world is in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we need to be tshuva and everything and anything is dependent upon His gzar din. When people are talking about what's going to be next year and they say it's going to last till whatever, I keep on saying, this is how the Goyim can talk till we're going to get some kind of a vaccine or whatever the case is, and obviously we're davening for it. But we have a Maila, we have a Rosh Hashanah, we have a Yom Kippur. The Gzeira of Tavshin Pei is not connected to Tavshin Pei Aleph. We need to be able to come to Shul now and daven and daven and daven, and we could get a completely different Gzeira on Rosh Hashanah Tavshin Pei Aleph. Well, let me say it in a little bit of a scarier form in the matter. I think one of the big steps that we have to take out of Chorban is to a second walk out of our comfort zone of feeling that everything is in control and we know what we're doing, and we're in the generation of, a remote control. I press the button and the air conditioning go off, and I press it and it goes off, and I wanted a drop colder and a drop hotter, and basically the feeling that everything is in my control. To chap that everything is in the control of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Melech Meimis Umechaye. Melech, the Eibishter, is really the one that is doing anything and everything that's happening in this world, and therefore we need to daven and ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the matter. If you remember, at the end of World War II, towards the end of World War II, Rommel, Yamach Shmo V'Zichro, was at the bottom of Eretz Yisrael and was about to enter into Eretz Yisrael. And we know what would have happened if Yamach Shmo V'Zichro would have made it into Eretz Yisrael and destroyed the Yidden that were there. They made major Yom Tefillas all over Eretz Yisrael. There's stories all over about what Rebbe Zalman Saratskin said. There's stories about what Rebbe Panovich Rab said. There's stories about what Rebbe Chaim said. There's stories about what happened in the Shtiblachs and Beis Yaakov, in Beis Yisrael, and what happened in Bnei Brak, and what happened everywhere around in Eretz Yisrael. Klal Yisrael be'emes got together and learned and davened and davened. They fasted for a few days and they davened and they davened. And for those that know history, as a result of that, what's known as the miracle of El Alamein took place, without getting into the details. But as a result of that, Rommel turned around and never entered into Eretz Yisrael. More than that, for those that do not know, up to that point, Rommel Yimach Shmo V'Zichro had not lost one battle. Every battle he fought, he won. From that point on, every battle he fought, he lost, and it was actually the starting of the downfall of Germany. The Brisker Rav said a sentence that I think about every year before Rosh Hashanah. Said the Brisker Rav, if Klal Yisrael in Europe would have davened before the first year of World War II, the way Klal Yisrael davened in Eretz Yisrael before Rommel entered in, they would have been able to be Mevatel Gzeira. What's the difference? Before Hitler and Shmo entered into Poland, they didn't have what it's all about. So they davened, but they didn't have to what extent. Before Rommel, Yimach Shmo V'Zichro entered Eretz Yisrael, they knew, to whatever extent they knew, how terrible it is. And they davened, and they davened, and they davened. And therefore, they were able to be Mevatel Gzeira. We chapped Eibishter what this Magefa is all about. We chapped that everything is in your hands. So let's take the time to daven and to cry and to talk to the Eibishter and to internalize to ourselves that it's be'emes. We need to be careful with the mask, and we need to be careful with social distancing, and we need to wash our hands and continue on. But I saw such a cute, it's called a vit. It's not true. They say v'chi nachash memis or nachash mechaye. Do you remember the situation? There was a time period in the Midbar where the snakes came and killed out by Klal Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu made a nachash out of copper, out of nechoshet. He puts it up high, and Klal Yisrael look up, and as a result of that, they get saved. And the Gemara says over there, V'chi nachash memis, was it the snake that caused them to die? V'chi nachash mechaya, was it the snake that Moshe Rabbeinu did that caused them to live? Ela b'shar shiso meshabdim libam klape avim shabashamayim. When Klal Yisrael look up, and they chap that it's not the snake, but it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that it's not anything else that they're doing, but it's really all in the hands of the Eibishter, and they do tshuva to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what they get saved. So someone said it in a very nice, it's what you call it, a remez, a hint. It's not real. He said there's three things that are the symptoms of the sickness. Nun is neshima. People have a hard time with breathing. Chet is chom. They have fever. And shin is shi'ul, they cough. So v'chi nachash meimit, is it these symptoms of the sickness that cause a person to die? Then there's three things that you have to do to protect yourself from not getting, and then nun is nikayon, chet is chavishat masecha. Nikayon means cleanliness, washing your hands. Chet is chavishat masecha, putting on a mask. And shin is shmirat merchak, social distancing. And again, v'chi nachash mechayet. Do you think that it is these things that cause you to have life? Now I'm saying again, avada, we have a mitzvah, and avada, we have to be careful. And avada, we don't want to be the cause chas v'shalom to anybody else, because we are mechuyev to worry about other people's lives and our lives. But we need to know clearly that it's not the nachash that's memis, it's not the nachash, it's the mechayet. You know who's really doing it? It's the Eibishter. And if we come and we realize that our life is in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then Beshashi so Meshabdim Libam Klape Avim Shabashamayim. When we have that it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's our Father, that cares about us, that's who we have to have a connection to, then we're preparing ourselves not just for Nisan Tokef Kedushas Hayom, but we're preparing ourselves to Meloch Al Kol HaOlam Kula B'chvodecha. Eibishter, you really are the king on the entire world. Hamelech Yoshev Al Kisei Ram Venisa. You are the king, and everything is in your hands. And you proved it so well to a tiny little virus, and look what you did to the entire world. But I want to take it to another step in what I feel like we need to take out of coming out of this tkufa. Before we go into Yad Vashem, I normally tell the girls the following sentence, that when we come to the time period of Chorban or Tsaras, there is an inyan to be mishtatef in the Tsar of Klal Yisrael. Yes, if you go through a lot of the kinos and a lot of what the Midrashim are all about, they're just describing the pain that Klal Yisrael go. And I'm going to start with the easier one, the physical pain that Klal Yisrael went through. How much Tsaras did Klal Yisrael go through? How many people got killed? How many people were sick? How many people were hungry? Before we go into Yad Vashem or before I go on a tour to Eastern Europe, I tell the girls in the same exact matter. Before I went to Spain and you heard about different other tsaras, we definitely talk about all the suffering that Klal Yisrael went through. And yes, there's an inyan to be mishtatef in their tsar and feel their pain and feel what it means to be hungry and feel what it means to be tired or scared or whatever the case is. So a girl once asked me a very good question. She said to me, what's the point to be mishtatef in the tsar of someone that's not around anymore? See, when someone is around and you empathize with them, you take away a part and a piece of their pain. I want to make it clear for a second, one of the harder things that I think that took place now through the COVID-19 was that people, be'emes, could not have people to empathize with them, to sympathize with them, to be together with them. They were very lonely, those in the hospitals and also in other forms. Avad Klal Yisrael tried in all different matters, but it was very difficult in this matter. And it is true that when you empathize, it definitely makes a difference. But what does it help to empathize with people that are not around anymore? Talk about World War II, talk about Inquisition, or whatever the case is. And I gave her an answer that I think is important also for our day and age. I told her over a story that I read once in Horizons, pre-Bina time, for those that remember. It was a young girl that was married, living in Eretz Yisrael, a 3-year-old daughter and a 1.5-year-old daughter, living in Neve Yaakov, shopping in Geula. For those that don't know, very normal. She was on a bus back from Geula to Neve Yaakov, just to get it clear, normal way of behavior, not World War II, not Inquisition, basic, normal way. On that bus, I think it was either 25 or 28 bus, when it passed the French Hill intersection, there were a few Arabs behind the bushes over there. Afterwards, they got rid of those bushes and they started shooting on the bus. The first thing that they did is they shot on the wheels, and as a result of that, obviously the bus could not continue going. So as a result of that, and it took a very, very long time for some reason for help to come. So they were on the bus and the Arabs just kept on shooting the bus. Finally, the bus driver told everybody to go underneath the seats. Not that underneath the seats is very safe, but I guess underneath the seats is safer than standing or sitting on a bus where there's bullets all over. So she describes that she's underneath the seat with a 3-year-old daughter and a 1.5-year-old daughter, and there's bullets flying all over. What does the Yiddish mama do if that's the case? You say Shema. So there's going to be the last moments of their life. They may die at any second. So she's saying Shema. So she says it. I don't know if a 1.5-year-old said it with her, but a 3-year-old definitely is saying Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Now she survived. And she wrote this unbelievable article as a result of a survivor. She writes that as she was underneath the seat with bullets flying and her saying Shema with the 3-year-old daughter, she was suddenly together with Klal Yisrael. She said, I was suddenly a Yid. I suddenly was doing the same thing that mothers did throughout all the generations, saying Shema Yisrael with their kids at the last moments of their life, during the time of Churban, the time of the Inquisition in Russia, by World War II. She said, you suddenly focus. What really is important, what really counts, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And let me say it in the following manner. And this is what I say to the girls before we go into Yad Vashem. We grew up today very disconnected from our past. World War II is definitely a big part of it. We don't live in the same exact place where our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents had lived for generations, but also our life externally is very different. We have running water and electricity and telephones and cell phones and computers and internet, and we have cars and we have airplanes, and we have a global world, and everything is opened. Externally, our life may be very different. But Lamaisa is not true. Lamaisa, we're Yid like they were Yidin. We came into the world for the same exact reason, with one Klal Yisrael, and we need to accomplish one thing in this world. And we grew up today in a very small box, and that small box is called me, or should I use a little bit more of the terminology, capital I, big capital I. We a little bit got very ego-centered in a certain matter, and even when you daven for yourself, you daven for your family, you daven for your community. I want to enlarge this box. I want this box to include Klal Yisrael. I want that when you say I, you mean I am a Yid. I'm a piece and a part of Klal Yisrael. I tell them we're not going into the museum in order to see what happened to them, and we're going to be so nice and feel their pain. We're going into the museum to see what happened to Klal Yisrael. And as much as you're a piece and a part of Klal Yisrael, as much as you ego identify yourself that I'm a Yid, I'm a part of Klal Yisrael, that's as much as you're going to feel the pain of what happened. I want your tefillas to be tefillas about Klal Yisrael. Say to the Eibush to look how unbelievable Klal Yisrael is. Say to the Eibush to look how much Klal Yisrael suffered. Say to the Eibush there came time that you could save Klal Yisrael. Not me, individual I, not what I need, but what Klal Yisrael needs, because I am a piece and a part of Klal Yisrael. I am a Yid. That's what my identity is. I want to make it clear. When we come to Rosh Hashanah and we ask, and I don't care if you're asking for physical thing, life, children, parnasa, health, you're asking for ruchnius things, you want kedusha, tahara, emuna, yerushalayim, Torah. Why should they wish to give it to us? Do we make a little bit of a calculation of how much he did for us versus how much we do for him? He does for us way more than we did for him. So why should he give it to us? So the Chazal give us an unbelievable eitzah. They say, don't ask as an individual Yid. Ask because you're a part of Klal Yisrael. Because I'm a part of this nation, starting with Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, that hopefully will be the link that will bring Mashiach. Because I am a Yid. That's why it's called Yom HaZikaron Hazeh. And we remind HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Akedas Yitzchak. And we remind HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. We remind HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Asar, Rugi, Malchus, of Yitzias Mitzrayim, and everything that happened. So you know what David just says to us, you want me to give it to you because you're a Yid. Let me check how much you really felt that you're a piece of part of Klal Yisrael. Min hameitza karatika. How much when it came to the tzaras of Klal Yisrael, did you cry for another Yid? Did you feel the pain from another Yid? Did you feel a piece and a part of Klal Yisrael? How much did that really happen? When you came to the kufa of the Chorban, did you be'emes bother you? Did you feel the tzara? Did you daven for Klal Yisrael? Then you could come and say, Eibush, to give it to me because I am a Yid. But I want to take it one more step in the understanding. And I'll start like this. We're made out of guf and neshama. Our guf is not the same. My guf is not yours, but our neshama is all the same. As much as you ego identify with your guf, you won't feel the pain of any other Yid. As much as you ego identify with your neshama, we're one Klal Yisrael. That's why you could go to Adam Gadol and he could cry for our pain as if it's his own pain. Because in Adam Gadol is kula neshama. He's not guf. How much do we really have that who we are is a ruchnius, our kirvas elokim, our keshet to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our limud Torah. Who we really are is the ruchnius part of what we am, and not the gashmius pieces that externally we also have to do. And let me say it in the following manner. I know that what happened now in this last kufa is a piece and a part of a chorban, and maybe it's a piece that we have to daven for, that we should be zoichet to get back our yeshivas, and we should be zoichet to get back our chadarim and our schools, and we should be zoichet to get back to have minyanim in the way we're supposed to happen. It's definitely a piece of a part of a chorban, and it's one of the klalos, v'hashimosi es migdashchem lerabos bate knesios ubate midrashos, that the Eibush Telemaisa closed down our educational systems, and he closed down our shuls and yeshivas. And again, Avada, it's a time to cheshvan and nefesh to ask ourselves if our shuls the way they're supposed to be. Maybe we're talking in shul, which we shouldn't be talking, or whatever the case is, bringing in things we shouldn't. And the same question is our educational systems the way they were meant to be, bringing about emunah and Yerushalayim and kirvas elokim, and nothing else came in. But I want to talk about something that I feel very strongly, and I think a lot of people feel it. I just want to give it words and talk about how we could connect to a little bit of the gadlus that you saw during the time of Chorban. Or let me say it like this. The mazel of the month of Av is an Aryeh. And one of the reasons are because there's a certain gvura that came about dafka through Chorban. Minasharim kalu ma'arayos gaveru la'asot retzon konam v'chefetz tzuram. Throughout the history of Klal Yisrael, so much gvura came about when Yidden were not allowed to do Torah mitzvahs, and how they fought during the time of the Inquisition, and they fought during the time of Rochel, and they fought during the time of World War II to be zoche to do mitzvahs in the matter. And one of the psukim that I always teach over is a pasuk in Shir Shim that says, Ani yeshena v'libi er. I'm sleeping, but my heart is really up. Kol dodi dofek pischili achosi rayasi yonasi tamasi. Kadosh Baruch Hu tried to wake up Klal Yisrael, but Klal Yisrael got swallowed up by the outside world, and Klal Yisrael got swallowed up by gashmias things, and a little bit lost who we really are and what's really important. And the Eibishter tried to wake us up, and it says that the Eibishter brought some tsaras on Klal Yisrael, and stronger tsaras on Klal Yisrael. But by the time we woke up, it was a little late. Kamti liftoach ledodi vedodi chamakava. I came to open up, but at that time period, it already became a hester panim. Metzauni hashomrim hikuni pzauni. Rashi says the shomrim are the goyim. Boy, did they beat us. Boy, did they bring about tsaras throughout all the generations. Read through the kinas, read through different stories. You'll see how much Klal Yisrael suffered. And then it says, Hishbati etchem bnot Yerushalayim. I made a shvur with you, the goyim. Im timtzeu etodi, the literal translation should be, if you find HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ma tagidu lo, what should you say to him? And the understanding is, the way Rashi brings down, is that the Gemara says, la'asid lavo. It's not if, it's when. La'asid lavo, the goyim are going to give a testimony on Klal Yisrael. And what will be the testimony that they will give? Shecholas ava'ani. That Klal Yisrael loves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, loves mitzvahs, cares about their kesher with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rashi says Nebuchadnezzar is going to give a testimony on Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah that were not willing to bow down to Avodah Zarah, even though they were going to be thrown in to the fire. And I'm going to say that Lenin and Stalin, Yamach Shema V'Zichram, and Turkmana, Yamach Shema V'Zichram, and all the different couples and the SS men during World War II are all going to give testimonies on all the Yidden, how much they loved Shabbos, and how much they kept kashrus, and how much they helped one another, and how much they davened, and how much they learned, and there's hundreds of stories of that matter. But a lot of times, when I tell those stories, I stop after a story and I say to the girls, if someone would look at your life and have to give a testimony about your life, what will the testimony be? Would the testimony be, she loved to go to work, she loved to make beautiful parties, she actually enjoyed going out and socially making friends? Or will the testimony be, Shecholas Avayini? She really loves the Eibishter. What makes her tick is she wants to give the Eibishter Nachas Ruach. What makes her tick that she wants to be a better person that will do the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know something? This time period, we got it. They made a time period that they suddenly told us, only essentials. And if it's not essentials, you cannot do it. And first of all, we suddenly learned that a lot of things that we thought were essentials were not really essentials. You can make a chasana with less people. You can make a bris with less people. We don't need to have so much gashmias. We could make it without going to a hotel and without traveling, and everybody could fill out the blank. But you know what happened on the other side in contrast to that? We suddenly had that tefillah is essential. That learning is essential. Go look outside and all the minyanim that they made outside. They could have so easily have said, you know something, we can't do it. We putter. We're not allowed to. We can't go out of our house, so let's daven, be yechidus. But they figured out and they went out to fight, and they figured out the way that it still should be safe, even though it's cold or even though it's hot and even though it's outside and even though it's not convenient. I used to walk out of my house and there was a minyan just outside on my grass, and I remember watching them with all the different plastics to figure out how to do the Sefer Torah, not do the Sefer Torah, and set it up and where they were standing and how distant they were standing, but you should be able to still see the chazan. It was still considered to be a minyan, and it was freezing cold outside, and sometimes it was even raining, and they were still davening on the outside. Or think about all the shiurim that we had on the phone and continue with the kids, outside of the kids, in the parks, in the basements, or whatever the case is. you know what we suddenly saw? Shecholas avani. That Torah is alive. Ki ein chayenu ve'orech yameinu. By a goy, when you say essential, it means food. When you say essential, it means medicine. By us, essential is to daven and to learn. By us, essential is to do chesed and care about another yid. By us, essential is our kirvas elokim. Min hameitza karatika. Sometimes we have to chap our gadlus. We're so easy to tell us that this is a generation that's so far away. Nay, it's not true. This is a generation that was able to prove and to manifest to ourselves first and foremost. Our gadlus, our gvura, how much it really means to us kirvas elokim. How much it really means to us our kesher with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How much we really want ruchnius things, and that's really essential. And how much other things are not really so important. Min hameitza karatika. If we could do that, then anani bamerchavka. Then you could come on Rosh Hashanah and say to the Eibishter, we care about your malchus, we care about your Torah, we care about Yiras Shamayim. We're really bnei olam haba. What we really are ruchnius people. That's what we're talking about. I am sure the Eibishter called Malachi Asheris and told them, Chazu banai chavivai. Look at my beloved kids. Look under these crazy conditions, what a Kiddush Hashem they are making in this world. And I want to say one last piece for a second, even though there's a lot more nekudas, but there's definitely a point of a feeling the Chorban of Beis Hamikdash, chapping that all that's ours in a physical sense and in a ruchniya sense. So many Yidden that are not from, so many Yidden that don't know of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so many people that are struggling in ruchniyas in all forms. This is all because that we lost our Beis Hamikdash, because this Chorban Habayis. This was all going to be taken care of when we have Melo Chol Haaretz Kevodo, a little bit of feeling the tsar and the pain of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that doesn't have a home, feeling the pain and the tsar of a father that their kids are so far away from him and don't even recognize them. Look around and see how much tsar there is in a ruchniya sense. And the emes, one more aspect of connecting back to asking for Binyan Beis Hamikdash, for the Geula, for having Gilui Shechina. But I think the Eibishter did for us in the last kufa a very interesting thing. I fly a lot, and every time I stay in the airport, I always have an interesting thought that crosses my mind. When Mashiach comes, and the world is going to continue to be a normal world, at least according to the Rambam, Olam Kiminhago Noeg, so I imagine that you still will be traveling. I don't know if I will have a purpose of traveling to the world if there's not going to be Yidden anywhere else, but in any case, the world supposedly is going to continue. How will the airport be? It definitely cannot look the way it's looking now. Not with the mixture of the men and the women, not in the way we sit on the airport, not in the way they go on, that's my phone. And I look and I try to figure out, like, what are they going to do? Have separate airplanes for men and women? They're going to have separate sections for men and women. You're going to have your seat if you're a man, if a woman who's going to sit next to. They're going to have men that are serving. They're going to have women that are serving. Like, what are they going to do? And it almost sounds like it's impossible. How could there be a world that's going to be proper? And you know something? If someone would have told us a few months ago that the world today is going to look the way it's going to look, the world, people are going to walk around with masks, there's going to be social distancing, that everything is going to be closed, that you won't be able to be traveled, that you'll have to be going into quarantine, and should I say ... in all the different places, that all these people that were so secure in what they have are not going to know what's going to be with their jobs. So many places, little and big and humongous and small, that were affected. If someone would have told us a different world, we wouldn't have been able to believe it. And you know what the Eibishter showed us? With a tiny little virus, with nothing of time, he actually made the world could be a completely different world. We almost can't remember a regular normal world that we once upon a time had lived in and so taken for granted that it's normal. You know what the Eibush is trying to say to us? Leave it up to me. With no time, I can make a quick switch and you could live in a perfect, beautiful world of Kedusha and Tahara and Romimus and Nitzchias with nothing. I think the Eibishter wanted to show us so clearly, look at the Churban that we went through now, but chap, that it's nothing to make the world look different than what you ever thought the world is going to look like. So Davin, that the Eibishter should make the world look like a different world, but a world in which it's Galei Kvod Malchuscha Aleinu Mehira. Show your glory in the world. A world of Hamelech Yoshev Al Kisei Ram V'Nisa. A world of Alkei Nekavelecha Hashem Elokeinu Liros Mehira B'Tiferes Uzecha. To see the ultimate of glory of you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know, I think the Eibishter did one other piece not too long ago. with the story of Ashkin, you know what I felt was the day before he was told that B'derech HaTeva, he finished. His third appeal was not accepted. And therefore, he's going to have to be in jail for the next 20 years. The next day, he was sent out of jail. Pitom, Yavo Adon El Heicholo, Asher Ata Mitzapim Lo. Could be in a split second, Mashiach would come and the whole world would change. And it could happen in a split second. We need just to ask for it. We need just to yearn for it. We need just to daven for it. Let's come these 3 weeks. Stop for a second. Make a cheshbon nefesh. Do a drop of tshuva. Stop in these 3 weeks and feel that we are klal yisrael. We are yidin. Ask ourselves, what does it mean to be a Yid? How could I be a better Yid? Chap the gadlus and the gvura and the romimus and the nitzchias that we have as Yidin, that we just revealed and showed so clearly. But let's just tap onto it, keep it with us, and let's daven for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that He should make a switch, such a quick switch, in nothing of a switch, and actually make us have a beautiful world of Kedusha and Tahara, Romimus and Nitzchias, a world in which the Eibishter will be clearly revealed in this world. Let us be zeiche, min hametza karati, to call out, to utilize this, and in Mirz Hashem we should be zeiche, that the Eibishter should anani bamerchavka, answer us with tremendous abundance, with tremendous simcha, with tremendous gados, that we should be zeiche to have a geula both for the individuals and for Klal Yisrael, with the coming of Mashiach. B'mehera, b'yamin.